You hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
Welcome everybody to our Wednesday weekly webinars hosted by SCORE Monmouth and Chris Carlsson. A few just things for this afternoon are, if you're new to this seminar, it's going to be Chris Carlsson, one of our SCORE mentors and an expert in SBA financing, is going to be leading the conversation. If you're a regular here, you're pretty much familiar with the way that the webinar works. During the course of the webinar, please do not raise a hand or ask for chat, as we're not monitoring that, but we do welcome and encourage your questions. So if you have a question, go down below to the Q&A and put that in there, and we'll try to get to all the questions during the webinar presentation. For those of you who are new, SCORE is a national organization funded by the SBA. Our role is to help people start businesses and grow business. Our local chapter, SCORE Monmouth, has about 35 or 40 volunteer mentors who are certified and ready, willing, and able to help you start or grow your business. And with that, I'd like to introduce Chris Carlsson, our speaker today. And Chris is going to be going over a lot of stuff, and we'll be ending right around 5-ish today. So welcome, Chris.
Well, thank you, and welcome everybody to another edition of our weekly update of the PPP and EIDL programs and what is going on there. Was an exciting week. Last week we talked about the probably coming changes, and after that we did have a Senate approving the new law, and also was signed by the president. So we do have new laws, and that's why you have my little clicking of the heels there. It did happen, and it's a big deal. We see I think, not only in this, that the 24 weeks came through, but also it feels like there is some light at the end of the tunnel in the economy. The business I'm more closely associated with seem to indicate that revenues are starting to perk up a little bit. So without further ado, let's go into a little bit of recap. First, the PPP program, the loans are still available. And there's still, I think, 80 to 100 billion left in the fund. And we are on 610 today. And last day for loan application is still at this point 6:30. So if you haven't done the loan, you want to do it, or you have friends, family, etc., who want to do it, it's still open to 6:30. And what I hear from people is that it's a lot faster now to get the loans done. So they're still there. It's still a good deal. It's actually a better deal with the changes that took place. And it's still no personal guarantees, no collateral, and personal recourse only if you misuse the money or lie or fraudulent behavior or something like that. Otherwise, there's no personal recourse on this money. And with the changes that took place, most people should be able, vast majority, should be able to get all of these loans actually forgiven. I think it would take a lot not to. All right, so there again, just to cover what we do every time on sole proprietors, I get a lot of questions about that. Again, it is automatic for sole proprietor to get 75% of the loan automatically forgiven, and unclear still what SBA is going to do with that, if they're going to kick that up to the bigger amount to kind of go with the 24 weeks and expectations of that. Keep your ears open on that. Many people are. So we did have changes to the PPP program and the forgiveness aspect of that. We have a new law, and the Treasury, Steve Mnuchin, and the SBA director jointly made a statement and clarified some new rules that are in step with what the law says, and actually oversteps it a little bit. It is expected that they are going to go in, meaning Congress, and actually catch up with the law on a couple of things. So they are huge changes, and it should be for everybody full steam ahead to operate normally and get forgiveness. So what do we have? What are the changes? As we spoke about last week, it did happen. The 8 weeks goes to 24 weeks, where we have a choice between taking the original 8 weeks of payroll period, that is the covered period, or go to 24 weeks. Many people have been struggling to get the full forgiven amount in the 8 weeks without going out on a limb and do extraordinary things. The 24 weeks should give almost everybody. I actually have not looked at anything. I have not spoken to anybody who could not get that accomplished in 24 weeks. Especially when the payroll went from a 75% of the forgiveness to 60%, and there is no cliff. That's the place where actually the Treasury and the SBA went in and went beyond the law that wasn't clear on that. It is no cliff. It is proportional. So we can't have more than 40% of the forgiveness being other eligible expenses, but you don't have to be 75 on payroll anymore. So it's now 60%, which means that you can have 66% of payroll related expenses being non-payroll expenses and forgiven. We'll get into remind what those are again, like we usually do. Another change is that I have this in reversed. I'm going to fix that here. My logic sometimes escapes me. So if we have approval of the PPP loan after 6/5, then it is automatically 5-year term on the stuff that's not forgiven. If it's prior to 6/5, it is to the lender's option whether they want to go to more than 2 years or not. A little bit of concern that banks may try to use that to their advantage. However, I go back to the 24 weeks. We should be able to plan that out to get forgiveness when we have this long. And we get into a little bit of details on that. And still, the adjusted application has not come out, but there is, as we went over 3 weeks ago, I think, or 2 weeks ago, there is an application you have to apply to get the forgiveness. That is crucial. If you don't apply, you don't get forgiveness. Then everything will be non-forgiven. And there is, I don't think that changed. It didn't. It's still 60 days. I think it is 60 days after the covered period is done, you have to do the application. If you don't get something from your lender, when you want to do the application, get with your lender. It's their responsibility to get the application to you. So now with this, we are kind of switching gears a little bit from the 8 weeks, the consternation, the panic on how do we plan that, what do we do, etc., to more of a normal operation type thing in 24 weeks. However, just as there is an application, we are going to have to give them the information that is needed to get the forgiveness. And that's still the same thing that's going to need there, the concept. I'm not going to go through it all. We've done it several times. But you got to know, and we're going to send these out to you as usual, so you can read what it is. But there is the covered period, that's the 28th or 8 weeks. I have a reference period, which that the covered period is compared to. Then we have FT modification, that's full-time equivalence. And then we have wage and hour reduction possibilities. That is, if we decrease pay rate for somebody. We have employee tables. That's in which tables that we have to put our payroll information to do the calculations that are needed. And then there are safe harbors. If we don't get the calculation we want, there are then time frames we can calculate safe harbors. We are going to cover those again here today. So, PPP forgiveness, what is it? So we've done in one of operations I'm involved in, we have done some calculations and dumped payroll into a reporting format I'm going to share with you, and actually going to send out 2 of them, one empty and one with examples in it. You're going to see blacked out here because I don't want to show names, obviously. But in this example, we are estimating at this point, projecting forward normal operations, what usually done, we're going to have about $929,000 of eligible payroll cost. And that means that the max non-payroll costs are $613,000, 2/3 of the payroll costs. So that means that the max forgiven, if we had that big of a loan, is 1.534 million. Now the loan was 943, so that's the cap, obviously. So in this case, this operation is going to easily have full forgiveness. So again, what are the payroll costs? I'm getting a fair amount of emails still on this. Payroll costs, it is the gross pay that you pay each individual, state and local taxes, payroll taxes. Sorry, I should say that. Now I say it. Payroll taxes, health insurance costs paid by the employer, and retirement contributions paid by the employer. The eligible non-payroll costs are business interests, rent, utilities, and I'm saying retirement contributions here twice, so we're going to take that out. So business interest, rent, and utilities in addition to that, to the payroll related costs. The period of time we are measuring that in is either the 8 weeks or the 24 weeks from funding, your choice. And we spoke about that a little bit the last time, and I'm going to mention that again as we go on here. So this is a little bit hard to read, but this is what it looks like on the application of what this means. This is how it actually looks, how it comes out. And in our format that I'm sending to you, it's automated. So the payroll cost, the business mortgage interest and payments, the rent and lease payments, the business utility payments. So in this case, 920,000, 45,000, 678,000, and 13,000. Now that adds up to 1.65 million. And we didn't have, in this case, any wage hour reductions, and we didn't have any FTE reductions. So that goes on. So that's line 8. The modified total for that was 1.656. The loan award was 943. The payroll cost, the 60% requirement, that was the 920,000 divided by 60%. So that becomes 1.534. So the least of those amount, what we can actually get forgiven is 943. That's what it looks like when you actually do the application. So then we have a 24-week PPP forgiveness spreadsheet. I will send the updated sheet to you. It's automated. And what you really should do, unless you're really good at this stuff, you're a good bookkeeper or a really good person that is really on top of this kind of stuff. Most of us aren't. Then you should get with your CPA or bookkeeper. I am intending early next week to actually take a separate session to walk through those automated sheets in detail. At this point, I'm really just going to show the basics of it. And here I'm going to take our Zoom thing and slowly move that in because it's sensitive. And slowly but surely, it's coming into view. There we go. There we go. Easy, Chris. Hey, we succeeded. So I have updated the first expense tracker. And I have actual numbers in here where we have dumped in what we knew and what our forecasted numbers are. For this particular operation. So I'm going to quickly walk through how that works and how you do to dump it in. So in this case, the funding was provided on 4/20. We're certainly going to do the 24 weeks because that will allow this operation to operate normally and get the full forgiveness. When it was 8 weeks, we had already spent, or this operation has already spent about $100,000 over. That kind of, we had lifted over from bonuses and those kind of things to be spent in the 8 weeks. Now we shut all that down because it's not going to be an issue. We're going to just do regular operation. So that we go from 4/20 to 10/4. Now, we still have an option, and we are going to do it in this operation. And that is that it's going to be starting for payroll purposes on 4/27 instead, because that is the beginning of a payroll period for us. So we don't have to do prorations. So it lines up with the beginning of a payroll period. Otherwise, you're going to have to prorate your payroll reports, and that's difficult. It's really difficult to do. So I would recommend, unless you have very specific reasons not to do that, to move the starting dates of the 24 weeks to the beginning of a payroll period. In this particular case, the operation got $943,000 and had already gotten $10,000 in the grant EIDL advance. And that's just a reference point here. We're not going to use it anywhere after this because it's supposed to be there so the SBA can deduct it out of the forgiveness. So in this first sheet, in this particular setup, what we do is tracking the expenses, the eligible expenses as we go. And this is, the first one here isn't directly from the payroll payroll reports dumped in, it's kind of an audit function that we put it the gross wages for every period of time that we do a payroll. And that's weekly in this case. And these are not actual real numbers, but they add up to the number. And then the health insurance payments, state and local taxes, retirement plan contributions. And then we have all the rest, the non-payroll eligible costs that we put here. And that is as we go, so we know what they are. We don't have to scramble at the end, and we can plan all this stuff. We have interest on mortgages, rent, lease payments, and utilities. And that all adds up down here, and that will carry forward to other calculations. Sooner or later, we'll get to the bottom of it. There we go. There are the totals. There. And at the bottom of this, there is also enter gross payment on individual here that is over 46,154. That, our friends, remember we had a bar of $100,000 cap on forgiveness. That is still there. That's annual compensation. For 8 weeks, that was $15,385, I think it was. For 24 weeks, it's $46,154 that is eligible for a person to be forgiven. So that's that first one. Then we have the worksheet. This is where the fun starts. And this is where the payroll information comes in. Here's the sheet, and under employee's name, in this case, I blacked out there all the names that are on these payroll reports. But here are all the calculations that take place for cash compensations, for worked hours, whether they're full-time or part-time, whether they are getting full FT, partial FT. In this case, we are electing to do the 0.5 FTE for all non-full-time, because all of the ones that didn't go full-time here, if I hit no, you're going to see why that is. It's all 0.1. Because the ones that weren't full-time worked so little that they only got to 0.1 FTE. So it's easy. In this case, we're just going to say, yes, we are going for the option of doing 0.5 for everybody. So that we do. And then down here at the very bottom, it tells us that we have 32 full-time FTEs, 2.5 FTEs for part-timers, for a total of 34.5. And that, my friends, are coming from a payroll for the 24-week period that we dump in here. So we got our payroll report. We asked our payroll company to write as a report that we then dumped into an Excel, and then we just plugged in here. That's all we did. Everything else is automated. So if we get the employee name here, we may need the last four in social for the reporting to the bank, but for this purpose of calculation, we don't. And then we have the hours worked and the compensation. That is what we dumped in here for the covered period. I know we're not all there. We did a projection of what it might be, and we are now actually doing it as we go so we can get an update as we go. Then down here at the very bottom, you can see all these tabs down here with the different calculations. So here we have all the different payroll periods that are needed. So we have the one that is 215 to 426. A bunch of calculations being done, but this, all we do is dump the payroll in here. There are names for these people here that I'm not showing, and here's the pay. That is an actual now from February 15 to 426. That is an actual and the pay there, so we know what that is. And likewise, it is for all of them here. So in the yellow fields, when you get this sheet, that's where you dump in your payroll information. Or if you have 3-4 employees, it might be easier to just kind of key this in. It's easy, and then the calculations do the rest. And that goes for all the pay periods that we need here. So then we go back. There's a Schedule A in this application for the PPP forgiveness. So, and it feeds all in. So here's the actual total compensation that feeds in for the payroll automatically. Don't have to do any calculations manually. 793,000. We had 34.5 FTEs. We had no wage reductions. We had, in this case, no compensation for people over 100,000, no FTEs for that. And we had $96,000 health insurance, 8,000 retirement contributions, and 23,000 in local and state payroll tax, 920,000. And then here it does the calculations that the application is asking us to do automatically. So I'm not going to go into all that. I'm just going to go down here. So here we compare the covered period, 34.5, to the number of FTEs we have from February 15 to June 30, and January 1 to February 29 to see which one is the lowest. And then we also have one for the chosen 12 weeks that we chose. We are a seasonal business, so we could do that. But the lowest one was 29, and then that gets compared to 34.5, so we have no FTE reductions. So we just go on from there. And that's what these calculations are for. I know this is fast, and you're going to get a chance to look at it when you get it. I just want to kind of go through, and we're going to have probably Monday, I'm going to set up a longer version of this. We can go through it. And now we're back to what we showed you before, how it all comes together to calculating the forgiveness amount. So this is how it works. This is the application, and this is how it all comes together with payroll reports, etc. So I'm going to take this down now. It works. So before I get into this, maybe we should take a couple of questions. I see Bill left his desk, so I'm just going to read here. And here's one question. How do I get a forgiveness application from Wells Fargo Bank who lent us PPP funds? If I use the online application, how do I submit it? There are no bank lobbies open in my neighborhood yet. And that is correct. There is going to be no such thing as actually handing over applications. There's going to be one of two things, probably mostly the first one, and that is that it's going to be an online, and it's going to be uploading files. Either you handwritten the application files, you scan it in and you upload it, or you do what we just went through and have that automated process so you can give them these files and upload that. Nobody is going to take this paper-wise. That ain't going to happen. There are too many of them. And the banks don't have these application portals up yet. I haven't seen them existing anywhere yet. They haven't done it, and I don't see how they would have yet. This just happened. So they're going to be there. They're going to have to be there soon because the first ones who are going to elect 8 weeks, it's coming up. So you're going to see them soon. If I got my PPP loan on May 12th and paid partners on May 22nd, how long can I wait for the next payment to go out? Don't know enough about your operations. If paying partners, if the partners was part of the PPP application and they K1s, then you can do that all along. If the question is, when are the restrictions being lifted for the use of money, when they say what you can actually use it for, which doesn't include distributions unless that was part of the PPP application. And so originally that was 630. Now the conventional wisdom is that it would be the end of the covered period, end of the 24 weeks. But again, if that's an operation where the partners K1s was part of the application, then that's just regular done. Are we supposed to notify the lender if we are going to choose the 24-week option? I don't think so. I think you're going to have to notify them if you are electing the 8-week option. Then you're going to have to go in and do the application after the 8 weeks. I think that's how it's going to work. Kind of just knowing how this goes through the banking system. They're not going to want to communicate with everybody several times on this. But go in and check if with applications. There is no requirement that I've seen that you are obligated to tell them this. So there's going to be an application. You can do the application for 24 weeks after the 24 weeks, and so they're going to have to allow to do that. Any new guidance on whether sole proprietors can hire an employee and get 100% forgiveness through payroll? The answer to that is no, and I'm not sure why we would want to kind of even deal with it, because there's an automatic forgiveness of the sole proprietors that was based on the actual loan amount. And then you have the same non-payroll things to deduct from that also. And probably the 75% is probably going to be moved to 100%. Is the fee I pay for my payroll service considered a payroll cost that is forgivable? No, it's not. It is not included in that. It's what I said: gross payroll, local and state payroll taxes, health insurance contribution from the employer, and pay and retirement contributions from employer. If you choose the 8-week period, can you still hire within the 12/31/20 deadline to hire back the same number of employees? Confused because you have 60 days to apply for the forgiveness. And to that, I would say no. I don't think so. I think that is still the 6/30 day. The 6/30 date, that week of 6/30 that is guiding for that. I would count on that. It doesn't make sense, but you can't wait to 12/31 to do this. it has to be completely clear. I expect that we're going to get more guidance coming out here shortly. If we reduce FTE hours worked per week, does that impact the PPP forgiveness? Yes, it does. It has a direct proportional effect. You calculate the average FTE for the 24-hour period, if that's what you choose, and then you compare that with the period you choose to compare it to. So either that's more or less. If it's less, then you have to look at the safe harbors, which is 12/31 or the last week. 12/31 compared to 2/15, or last week of covered period compared to the week of 1/1. Are the score mentors that can help us fill out the spreadsheet? The score mentors are not going to actually fill out the sheet for you. We can help you walk it through, but the score is not going to obtain that liability that could come with doing that. And that's really not our job as mentors. But we're willing to go through, help you with it. And in the spreadsheet that I'm going to send out, it's a question of just filling in the payroll stuff. All right, so go on there a little bit and we'll pause the questions for just a little bit. Now, this is one that I've gotten several questions on, and that is the relationship with the PPP and the IDL grant or advance. So how does that work? The PPP and the EIDL grant are not added together. So what you do is that you calculate the PPP forgiveness, as we just went through. Then SBA deducts the EIDL grant from that amount of PPP forgiveness. Then the result of that is a net PPP forgiven. And in that, you keep the EIDL grant and the net PPP forgiveness. So if your forgiveness is $10,000 and your EIDL grant was $6,000, that leaves you $4,000 of net forgiveness. That is what you keep and don't pay back. You also keep the EIDL grant. So that's how that works. So here, back to talk about what you're going to need from your payroll company. You're going to need those reports for these here, for these period of times that we're talking about. All of these 10, you're really going to need it for eventually. But here, in the reference period, that's the period of time where you actually compare for the FTE for the covered period to one of these. Most of us can in advance say which period of time is going to be it. Like the one we look at the example, it was easy. We knew in that example that the lowest FTE was going to be in 1/1 to 2/29/20. We knew that. There was no question. And that's what we compared to number 3 here. And then for the safe harbors, it's 12/31 compared to 2/15, and it's last week of covered period compared to 1/1. So what you need by person is the hours worked and the cash compensation. And then you have to figure out how many full-time hours there is in each one of those time periods. This spreadsheet I'm sending to you later has that built into it. This, I am not going to bore you to go through. what these calculations are for safe harbors. You can look at that when you get the file. Let's take a couple of questions again. Do you know if all loans have a personal guarantee, PPP or EIDL? PPP does not have a personal guarantee. Has no collateral, has no personal guarantee. So if you end up defaulting on that, they cannot come after you personally. The operation you have can apply for an SBA loan again. Different issue. On the EIDL loan, yes, it's like a regular SBA loan. There are personal guarantees and there are collateralization by the operation that's getting the loan. How I've seen it happen is that they actually asked us to go in. This was in California. Actually, we went to the state of California and uploaded and inputted the actual UCC filing against us. And they wouldn't fund the loan until that was done. You can use a service for that too. If it's under 25,000, they don't do it. Otherwise, they do. Do we count 24 weeks as 7 days times 24, 168 days? Yes, you do. That's exactly how it works for the 24 weeks. What if your forgiveness exceeds the total PP forgiveness by more than the EIDL grant? Let me see if I can figure that out. What if your forgiveness exceeds the total PPP forgiveness? Okay, so if the EIDL grant is larger than the PPP forgiveness, then my understanding is that EIDL grant then eats up all of the PPP forgiveness. So not the end of the world, because this is a 1% loan, and there's some scuttlebutt that it might be a 0% loan that is going to now start being paid off 10 months after the end of the covered period, and then over 18 months. So if your EIDL grant eats up all the PPP forgiveness, you end up paying back all of the PPP starting 10 months after the 24 weeks, then over 18 months. I hope I answered that question. I'm not quite sure. If PPP is 30K, EIDL is 8K, forgiveness is not 40K, no. The PPP is 30K, the maximum forgiveness is 30K minus the grant portion of the 8K. I'm not sure if the 8K in this question is the EIDL loan or 8K is the grant. Okay, now I understand. So what happens is that if you get 30K forgiven, 8K gets deducted out of it, so it becomes 22, and you keep the 8K grant. Okay, so now I'm trying there to get, you can't see it, but I'm trying to get something out of my screen here. So we went quickly through this the last time. Should I do 8 weeks or 24 weeks? I would say 99% of people are going to do 24 weeks because it takes no extraordinary efforts to get to the total forgiveness amount out of your payroll and eligible. If you have accomplished it already over 8 weeks, yeah, get it over and done with. Don't deal with it anymore. Get it out of the way. Otherwise, Don't do anything extra, just operate your business and you're going to get there over 24 weeks. I would be much surprised if you didn't. And so I wanted to jump a little bit here to this one. And that is, I've gotten a lot of questions about, and we have that in one operation that we have. Before we do that, I'm going to see if there's more questions. Then follow up to the previous. You then have to pay back the 8K that was deducted to the bank eventually. Yes, whatever is not forgiven, as I said, it's 10 months after the end of the covered period, after the 24 months, 10 months after that, you start paying that over 18 months. What is the best way to get the most current updates on PPP and EIDL loans? Is there a website that is the most current? Forbes. There is a website that's supposed to be current. That is the FAQ by SBA. It's not current with all the things that it's getting out there. So I would say what I have found is that Forbes seems to be the most up to date. And those CPAs that are writing those articles at Forbes, and I have a line to them, so I communicate with them. So I try to stay up on all this stuff. It affects us too in our operations, so we are trying to stay on top of it. And here I was going to jump in to this. When do I open? How do I look at this? And I had a little, is it that? Is it that? No, okay, well, hold on, bear with me for a second on this, and I'm going to try to see. Start up back of the envelope. Let's say pertinent. Hey, something's happening. There we go. So I formulated something quickly here, back of the envelope this morning. So I said, how do you look at that? Because I've had a couple of conversations with some people we deal with, and also a couple of SCORE clients. So how do you look at it in terms of, do I open now, or do I wait a couple of weeks or a couple of months to do this until demand comes back and those kind of things? There is no general answer to that. You know your operation. You're going to have to do literally a back of the envelope type thing. And this is a little bit more elaborate than that, but you know your operations. You can do this. Is basically what you're looking at is, what is the cash going to be that it's coming in? So depending on what operations you have, that could be revenues or it could be collection of revenues. You know your operations, you know how that works. And then you have all the costs that are going to come with it. So literally just go down, and even if you do it by hand, literally on the back of an envelope, you know how it works for your operations. So go through that, and you do like this here. Basically, go through what are my costs going to be in big picture. This doesn't have to be exact by any means. That's not what it's for. It's big picture, which is best for me. So in this actual example I'm looking at here, in rough numbers, even thousands and all that stuff. So question is, are we going to start up now? Or are we going to do in 4 months? And if we do the different things, what do I think that my revenues are going to do? So we thought in this particular case, we probably about 4,000 this is in a scale. So 4,000 in the first month, 8,000 in next, 12 and 18 in the fourth, if we open up now. And these are going to be the expenses that follow with it, and these are going to be how those expenses are going to fall. And in this case, we have, let's say, 45,000 in the bank starting out, and this is what's going to happen to cash flow. First month, we're going to lose 8,000, 8,000, 7,000, 5,000, 2,000, then positive, and then more positive. So we end up with 20,000 bucks. So what happens if we look at it differently? And we go and say, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to wait 4 months and open up in 4 months. So then we kind of have the same development, and with the cost associated with how they would come in, we got, in this case, we got 2 months free rent, and then our cash flow is minus 2,600, minus 10, minus 9, minus 8, minus 6. And in the 6 month, we end up with 8,000 bucks. That seems to be a worse scenario for us. And we said, let's look at it, makes it more complicated. Let's look at it a little bit longer. So we went to look at it for 12 months. And if we wait till the 4th month open up, we are going to end up with $17,000 in the bank, where we started out at 45. Now let's see what happens if we actually do it right away. So our guess, best guess in this scenario, we start with 45,000. In this case, we end up with 54,000. So we actually have positive cash flow in the first 12 months. The reason for that is because that in our particular example, for us in this example, we would have a quicker acceleration of revenues up front if we got a jump on it. That's our guess. It's just a guess. And that increased the revenues faster once we think that it's going to start opening up. It's going to be different for everybody. You have to do your own. But that's kind of how you do it. It took me this morning to do this half an hour. And it presumes that you know your operations, you know what the costs mean, and all those kind of things. So there are also, I have discovered, and they're actually pretty darn good. There are checklists for different industries that people have developed for SCORE, of checklists for reopening. There's for retail store, for restaurants, and for other industries. I'm going to send you the email, or I'm going to send it to Bill and Claire, and they're going to send it. That has the links to these, and this is what it looks like. A checklist, reopening for retail store after the shutdown, the general steps, assess your financials, adjust the business model, plan your staffing, set up the health screening, market your business, keep your store clean, blah, blah, blah. All this stuff, good checklist to make sure. And it's commonsensical stuff, but it's a good checklist to go down and say, okay, have I thought about this? Have I thought about this? I thought they were pretty darn good. And I was pleased to see that SCORE did that. All right, jumping to questions again. Do you know if the PUA extra $600 a week is going to continue? I think I read in my news feed this morning that next week, I think, is the end of that. So no, it's not going to continue forever. I think there's an end of it by next week. But check on that. I'm sure you can Google it. When does that end? and it comes right up. Or tell I can't say because she will come along. Okay. We are at 4:55, and I don't have any more questions. And I am going to do a run through of the calculation sheet for the forgiveness calculations, probably Monday afternoon. And we'll send out the invite, and whoever wants to come on. And if you have your CPA or your bookkeeper, whoever's going to help you do this, then I would say encourage him or her to jump on with you. I have discovered that there's a lot of confusion on this. The knowledge isn't out there yet, and you don't want to wait till the 23rd week to try to do this. You are going to get yourself messed up, because remember, there are two absolute things we have to do to get the forgiveness. We want the forgiveness. Number one, we have to do the application. Number two, we have to give them the data so that the bank can check their box that they have looked at it and it's okay, because that's what it's about. And the bank is more than likely going to do it with machine reading, maybe with some exception-based people. So that's where we are.
Okay, so thank you, Chris. Once again, every week, this is changing so rapidly that it's always great to tune into our Wednesday webinar with Chris, because next week it'll be a whole different things of whatever is current. So it's important to keep coming back every Wednesday at 4 p.m. so Chris can give us our latest information as things rapidly change. And I would encourage you, when you come back next week, do have some questions ready, because your specific questions will be answered by Chris. And as far as SCORE, we have these weekly webinars also on Fridays. And this Friday we have a webinar at 3 p.m. and it's about virtual networking, because sometimes when we go in the real world and you network and you go to a group and you may come across empty and not have any real results. We happen to have Ashley Owens, who's an expert of teaching people how to network. And now she's going to be teaching us how to virtually network. So that'll be Friday at 3 p.m. Of course, SCORE offers always free and forever free business mentoring. So if you're looking to start a business or grow a business, or you just have some questions, you could just go to monmouth.score.org, request a mentor, and we can match you with a mentor that will best help your business. SCORE is funded by the SBA, but we're a volunteer organization, always ready, willing, and able to help you. I hope that you enjoyed this webinar today. Tomorrow, you're going to be getting a follow-up email with a survey in it, and we're also going to send you a YouTube to our YouTube channel, and I'll have this entire webinar available for you to look and really dive down to when you get a chance. Once again, this is a SCORE Monmouth webinar. They're always free. Our mentoring is free. For those of you, if you haven't already signed up, do consider coming back with us on Friday, 3 p.m. for our weekly webinar series, and that's always changing. So we hope to see you Friday. Stay safe out there, and thanks for coming to Chris's webinar today. And you're, of course, welcome to return to get the latest update from Chris next Wednesday.
All right. And thank you, everybody. And hopefully we can get a haircut soon, too.
Hopefully. That'll be Chris's update for all of us.
Yeah. It is itching my forehead. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Enjoy your day.
Thanks.